Next, I would love to bring up an educator, John Rice, Director of Ed Tech here at DCPS, Alefiya Bhatia, co-founder and president of Crescerance, and our 7th grade student, Aria Summers. Oh, that's Siraj Carter, I'm sorry. Siraj Carter, 7th grader at Center City Public Charter School. Sorry.
You should switch up.
Just to start us off. You don't get to get comfortable yet. Sure, a couple remarks on what the DCPS is doing.
Absolutely. Hello, friends. So I am here to share kind of what we're doing from the ground up here at the District of Columbia Public Schools, which represents about 55% of the students in Washington, D.C. Joseph, where's Joseph? Did he? I'm hoping that the story you shared indicates about your kid coming home with the PDFs is not representative of D.C. Public Schools, because my recollection is your kids go to Maryland schools. Okay, Virginia. So no shade to our neighbors, but I would have been nervous if that was a story about a DC public school, just to be clear. So I was a career teacher. I was hoping to be a career teacher, taught for 8 years in Florida, overseas, and then here in DC, in Southeast DC at Anacostia High School. And about 5 years ago, joined the dark side of the force and went to the district office because I thought, what better way to, ruin my career than be a bureaucrat that everyone hates and no one listens to. So I can sympathize with our other bureaucrat friends here. But as a teacher, I always hated those district office people because I was like, what do you guys do? You write papers and you send out documents, but it wasn't until coming to the district office that I realized there was a huge role to play in helping be strategic about how we use educational technology and blended learning in our schools. My colleague David is with me today, and David joined about 5.5 years ago as well. Prior to that, there were really just pockets of things happening in DC public schools. There was not a cohesive strategy. There was not a cohesive way we were leveraging technology to improve student and teaching outcomes. So I'm pleased to share a little bit today about what the story of DC public schools has been and some of the things we're doing, and I'll give a couple examples of some of our classrooms as well today, if everything works. Boom. So DC, if you don't know this, is the fastest improving urban district in the nation, based on the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Yeah, we're very pleased to share that, yeah. And it's not because of me in any way whatsoever, just let's be that clear. So we have about 115 schools, 50,000 students, about 3,500 teachers, and you can see that on the list of urban schools that have taken the NAEP assessment, DCPS is number 1 in showing the most growth. So we're really pleased about that. I'll show you a couple slides. Because that was not always the case. And this is from 10 years ago, actually from 2007, about 9 years ago. If you look at where DCPS was, we were second from the bottom on these scores for reading not that long ago. And so there's been a pretty significant increase since then. For our math scores, you can also see a similar rise, and this again is on the Nation's Report Card, or the NAEP assessment. So DCPS has made some really significant gains in the last few years relative to other urban districts. We're not at the top of the pack, but we're in the middle of the pack at this point, and we're in the right direction. And I'm excited to say that we are on an upward trajectory in terms of our student achievement in math and reading on a number of other measures. So let me go back and talk a little bit about how we got there. So in 2012, our Chancellor Kaya Henderson established 5 capital commitment goals. And so he said, these are the things we want DC public schools to be accomplishing and doing. Some of them are pretty basic or more common that you would expect to see for a school district, such as improving achievement rates, increasing our graduation rates and enrollment. But we also have some maybe non-traditional measures that you didn't think of, such as improving student satisfaction and focusing on our lowest 40 performing schools. So it's been 4 years since these goals were established. Our graduation rate is at an all-time high in DC public schools, the highest it's ever been, which is fantastic. Our enrollment has been back-to-back increases for the first time in 50 years. We've improved our achievement rates, and we've also started, like I said, measuring student satisfaction. Our student satisfaction is at an all-time high as well. So what I also want to talk about is investing in our struggling schools. DC identified 40 of our lowest performing schools and said, what are the strategies we're going to implement to help those students really catch up with their peers? DC for all the successes we've had, has a persistent achievement gap, one of the biggest achievement gaps in the country. And so that's been a big focus of our previous Chancellor, Kai Henderson, and our current Chancellor, John Davis. And so I'm going to share a little bit about what we've done to work on that. Notice up here you don't see putting technology in every kid's hands or anything like that. These are the academic and larger goals we want to have, but we do think of technology as a way to reach each of these. I would say that all 5 of these goals over the last few years have been impacted by the use of technology and blended learning in our classrooms, and we think of that as a tool, one of many tools in the toolbox to help improve student achievement, student outcomes, as much as we would have family engagement, strong curriculum, other things that you don't see up here, but that are tools to reach these harder and larger goals. And I probably talked too fast, so I'm going to slow down, but I got a little sign. So if you were to come to one of our classrooms, you would see a station rotation model in our elementary schools very similar to this. So I wanted to show this just so you could have a picture of what a classroom is like in DC public schools. So this is a model of a math classroom that has a 2-hour math block, which is a pretty hefty period of time. It's broken into 3 groups: a teacher introducing the lesson for 10 minutes with all the students. The students are represented by multicolored dots, kind of representing where they might be in their achievement levels, and the star represents the teacher. And then they spend the bulk of their time, about 105 of those 120 minutes, in a station rotation broken up by their different groupings that have been assigned by real-time data that's been from our state tests, from our real-time assessments from educational technology tools, from other kind of measures that we have. And the teacher works with those different groups. Instead of working with 25 students at once, they're working with 8 students at once and able to give a much better student-teacher ratio. While other students are working, the green dots represent working on computers, where they've got adaptive digital content that meets them where they are. And then finally, we've got a third group that's kind of an independent or collaborative station, oftentimes a station where a special educator or another adult in the room is able to help facilitate sustained silent reading or a writing project or a collaborative group project. And this model has really helped us move student achievement in a lot of ways, and it's been adopted by dozens of our elementary schools. And it's actually had some pretty good gains. This is a quick results slide that I wanted to share over a 2-year period. We used an educational technology program called ST Math in our math classes. In a rotation similar to what you saw. The students in blue represent the schools where we did not use educational technology, and the orange represents places where we did use this ST Math program. And you can see that on our state test, the average student in DC improved 5.2%, so they showed some gains. However, if you were in the classroom using that blended learning model, your chances or your state test scores on average rose 19 points, so almost 4 times higher using a blended learning station rotation. So we feel a lot of confidence in the data we're getting back. That's not just anecdotal, that's not just technology is really good, I don't know how to use it, I need some structure. This provides that structure and allows teachers to know what to do, how to best leverage that technology, and how to get results for their students. So we knew that wasn't enough, though, so we've modified our model a little bit to a 2.0 model where there's a lot more student voice and choice. And I could probably spend 30 minutes telling you about the ways in which we're incorporating student voice and choice and giving students more ownership over what stations they go to, what kinds of things they're doing in the classroom, what ways best learn for them, and really trying to personalize that learning for those students. But my time is up. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me or use Twitter or whatever technology tools you got. Thanks very much.
Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I get to be the last adult speaker before we hear from our wonderful student speaker, so I'll try to make it good. But my name is Alefiya Bhatia. I'm co-founder of Crescerance. Nasir was kind enough to invite us to come and be the entrepreneur voice on the panel today. And I'm kind of wondering about what digital divide we're talking about. There are 2.6 billion smartphones on the planet today, 7 billion mobile devices, which is up from 700 million just 10 years ago. The App Store was only launched 8 years ago, believe it or not, even though we live by the App Store. It's only 8 years old. And last year alone, we downloaded 226 billion apps in a year. So there's a lot of technology, and we use it a lot. I know every single one of us has our phone out, and we're using it in one way or another. And even from a student perspective, we have a third of our students here in the United States that are using school-provided devices, which is pretty good. If compare it to 5 years or 10 years ago, a third of our students have school-provided devices. But what's more interesting is 80% of our high school students, 60% of our middle school students, and 35% of our elementary school students have their own smartphones. They own their own smartphones. So they've got the devices, and they're using them in a lot of different ways. And sorry, that's a little blurry, but our districts and all of our educators and districts in the room, you're doing a good job of filling this gap. You've doubled your budget with hardware spend and software spend in the last couple of years. And you're seeing those increases happen in terms of the technology devices that are in schools. But what's interesting is that only 20% of our teachers are using technology in the classroom today. And the gap that we're seeing is not necessarily a technology gap, it's a skills gap. And it's a skills gap, kind of a twofold skills gap. The first fold is our teachers that are able to really integrate and bring these experiences into the classroom effectively, not just in a siloed technology class, but in math or in science or in English or geography, and use technology as a part of their everyday life. But it's also a skills gap in terms of what the students are doing with the technology. We all know that our kids know how to use these phones and these tablets way better than we do, but how are you actually using that effectively to learn and to become a more skilled part of the future workforce? And so some interesting numbers here. In just the last 3 years, the demand for digital literacy, for example, has increased 200%. Enterprises are saying we need digital literacy in the workers that you're sending us. 200% increase in that demand, 150% increase in the demand for critical thinking, and several other very important soft skills. But there's some hard skills as well. We all know that there is a big gap in computer science skilled workforce in our country. By 2020, we will have 1.2 million open computer science jobs, and we do not have the people to fill them. So what's even more interesting is outside of the particular jobs, we have 50% of the jobs that we have today are not going to exist in 20 years. 50% of the things that you and I are doing today will not exist 20 years from now. So we can't really talk about teaching our kids specific career skills. We have to teach them much more than that. We have to teach them how to almost create their own jobs. And of course I'm biased, but how to be an entrepreneur and how to weather whatever storm they're able to go through and be effective with that. So many of you may have seen, and I don't know what happened there, sorry. We're not gonna play this video, but Gary is a famous media mogul who was on Larry King Live a little while ago, and he talks about how school is failing entrepreneurs. And he said it failed him as an entrepreneur, and it's failing entrepreneurs across the country. And I want to share with you my story. I don't think schools failed me, but they didn't help me become the entrepreneur I am today. I'm a former educator. I am an educator turned entrepreneur, an edupreneur, if you will. And my husband and I started our company 5 years ago with 2 of us, and we're 65 of us today. But I did not learn how to become an entrepreneur through school or college. And what I did learn was a lot of very valuable lessons along the way. But I'm not the only entrepreneur in our company. We have intrapreneurs, we have techpreneurs, we have edupreneurs, we have appreneurs who are my favorite kind of preneur. We started our company with us building apps for schools and districts, and now we're teaching kids how to do that as well. And so appreneurs are students that are building and creating and launching phenomenal app businesses across the world. And the program that we have that is teaching kids how to do that is called MadLearn. I was at Janey Elementary School, a school here in DC, just yesterday, and one of the students, it was a 5th grade class, and one of the students raised his hand and he said, "Ms. Allman, what does MAD stand for?" And the other kids looked at him, "Mobile App Development." It was really cute. But MAD does stand for Mobile App Development, and we're teaching kids. We're in about 29 different states. We have 9,000 apps that have been built with the program just in the last 2 years since we launched it. But it's been really exciting to see the passion that students come to the table with, the ideas that they come to the table with, and then what they do it when they're given the ability to actually create it. As Joseph was mentioning, the importance of creation as opposed to consumption. So these are a couple examples of some apps that have been created and launched with MadLearn. Actually, both of these are available on the App Store, so if you want to download them, feel free. Drone Zone was created by a group of high school students in Georgia, rural Georgia, and they wanted to catalog and organize and provide information for all commercially available drones. So, and at the time there was nothing like that on the App Store, so they decided to create an app to do that. Rainbow Loom was created by a fifth grader in Florida. She has over 200,000 downloads on her app and is looking at, I believe, trying to figure out a way to have a shopping cart in there and some other exciting things, but really, really fun things that we're starting to see there. Another really exciting implementation of something like app development is a phenomenal collaboration among two of my favorite women. Vicki Davis, for those of you who don't know, is Cool Cat Teacher on Twitter. If you don't follow her, I highly recommend that you do. She's a phenomenal resource. And Angela Myers, who started the Choose to Matter movement. But these two ladies and us came together to create Mad About Mattering, which is taking app development to the next level. So you're creating apps that matter, but you're doing it through global collaboration. So these students are not collaborating with each other in their classroom, they're actually collaborating with students in other schools across the world, and they're really using they're figuring out how to work online, how to be in dispersed teams, how to collaborate through virtual environments, and actually create an app together across school or classroom walls. So very, very exciting stuff there. And the kinds of apps that they've created are things like Quit the Addiction, things like suicide prevention, things like Enough, which is one of my favorite apps. You can actually check it out on the Mad Store, which is our version of the App Store. It's a free app, you can download it. But Enough is an app that is a domestic violence app, and it's helping people in domestic violence situations stand up and say, enough is enough, I need to leave. Very powerful, very, very in-depth research and resources that they've provided through their app. So really, really cool things. The reality is, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot be this anymore. And unfortunately, a lot of our classrooms still look like this today. We can't go back to this. We don't have the time, we don't have the capacity to be in a place where we are a sage on the stage. We absolutely have to flip the way that we're learning and change the things that need to be changed and disrupt the things that are stagnant and stable, because we don't know what the future holds in a lot of different ways, and it's imperative for us to all be entrepreneurs or preneurs of any kind. And so my question or my challenge to you today would be, what kind of preneur are you? If you're a superintendent in the room, can you be a superpreneur? A policypreneur, an investorpreneur, a studentpreneur. I'm a teacherpreneur, I'm an edupreneur. So we all need to really disrupt and innovate in all of the work that we're doing. If we do not do that, our students will be so far behind when they leave school and college that we won't be able to fix it. So be a preneur. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alefiya. But so Siraj is going to share, seventh grader from Center City Public Charter School here in DC. Share what you're most excited about as it relates to learning, and what's your biggest challenge, and what can we do to help?
Okay. I do not have a slide presentation because, I'm 12 years old. So I'll mostly be giving not only my opinion, but the opinions of people who go to the same school as me. I went around asking students what they want to get out of technology from schools. And a lot of them started out with just basic programs that we already have. For example, there's this one program, I don't want to give names because, there's this one program that people feel is just guided reading, where you're just taking a book and sitting down and reading with the teacher, except on a computer. So they feel like it's just taking just a paper and pencil and just making it 5 pounds heavier. So I feel that we might need more computer programming classes because, as Alefiya said, a lot of jobs won't be available in the next 20 years. So jobs that students are already looking into sadly might not be a possibility. So I don't want to say like as a backup, but as a backup, we might need more computer programming classes. Myself, I've been looking to computer programming for the last year now, and when I grow up, I want to be not only a computer programmer, but help with game design. And eventually one of my goals is to be computer programming for NASA and helping astronauts get to Mars or even other planets. Right? Planets, I think. I was in this program called the STEM program, sponsored by Verizon. Don't worry, I'm not sponsored right now, I swear. And we had this one program called, we had two programs actually. One was called Unity and one was called Blender. The Unity program was basically computer programming for beginners, allowing students to experiment with computer programming. And eventually, at the end of that unit, we were allowed to create our own game. It was fun, and if we could be able to get that into schools, that would be great. A lot of students in my school are even looking into computer programming and game designing, since they've been playing games for most of their time, that came out wrong, and want to do so themselves. The other program was called Blender, which was a 3D design program, which taught people how to 3D animate and 3D design. And so for all of the animators and the artists at my school, if we could get that into schools all over the nation, country, thing, that would be great too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Siraj. So I'm gonna shoot it over to you to ask Siraj and Alefiya and John some questions. Any questions? Again, please share your name, your affiliation, and one question. Please make it a question.
Hi, my name is Camzy Agata, and I used to be at DCPS, used to be at Department of Ed, and now I'm in Discovery Education. Siraj and I guess John, maybe Alefiya too, you're feeling really comfortable about technology, pretty much everything's been probably feels pretty comfortable with technology. Are you coming across any teachers who are not so comfortable with technology, and what do you think that as kids and as district leaders we can do to help support our teachers? Is that something you've come across in your education so far?
Can you also give me a course in public speaking after this?
Well, the first step, if you're going to put technology in the hands of teachers, the first thing you have to do is teach them how to use it. Because you can give all the technology in the world to a teacher, but if they don't know how to use it, then, well, how are they going to teach kids with it?
So Camzy, my experience has been teachers need the technology to be solving a problem for them, and that's the latch that helps them connect to it. And there's sort of some teachers saying differentiation with my students is such a struggle, but I feel like technology will allow me to work at different levels with my students and provide them differentiated lessons in a way that I would otherwise be doing by hand every night, as Joseph kind of described. I was at a middle school last week, however, where the
Principal said, I don't really want to use technology that much. I don't feel like it's going to be a big value add. The system as is working just fine for my kids. And so it was a big challenge for me to figure out what is a problem that it's going to be solving for her and her staff to allow them to use technology. So I think not everyone's on board, but there are ways that we can find. So for her, she doesn't want a transformative model. She's looking for some extra geometry lessons that can push her middle school students that are ready to take geometry. And so that's an entry point that'll allow her teachers to find a solution and then grow from there.
And I can just add one thing to that. We work with hundreds of teachers across the country and kind of train them on app development, right? And you think a typical history teacher or a typical math teacher is thinking, why do I want to do app development in my class? Or that's going to be really hard. And what's really exciting is that if you can take one step at a time, and Vicky, who I showed earlier, she talks about innovate like a turtle, which is counterintuitive when you think about it, but if you really can take one step at a time, master something, become really amazing at it, be confident in it, you're more likely and more confident in taking that next step and that next step. And so over time, your steps become quicker, but you're still taking one step at a time. And so when we train and do professional development with the teachers, it's very, very focused on getting them to be successful. They all come out of professional development having made their own app, and so now the sky's the limit, and so they can do that with their kids. So I think just empowering them with their own success with it will allow them to have the students be successful as well.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Gordon Friedman, National Lab for Education Transformation. Question for John. We've all heard a lot of this conversation before. We're all in the right place. You're given the magic wand. What do you do with it?
Is this the Harry Potter magic wand? Tell me what my magic wand does.
So you have resources and people to do what you think about really needs to be done, as opposed to a lot of the incrementalism we talk about.
Yeah, so I found that when I started this work several years ago, we had several philanthropies and foundations who like to give us money. They said, do something innovative and new that can be a proof point. And then we did. We made some proof points, had some successes, showed you some of the results. And then when I came back to those same philanthropists and foundations, said, we've got some proof points to show you. We've got 2 years of data. Will you help us scale this across the district? They were like, hey, but what's the new thing you're doing? Try something else new. And so I found that it was hard, and colleagues across the country told me they can create 1 or 2 awesome schools in their district. They can really push hard, but the money to scale things and take those successes and put them across the district has been really the work of the last 3 or 4 years for me. And it's definitely a slower process because there's not as much shiny new things in taking that station rotation model and putting it in 70 elementary schools as opposed to 5. So I think that would be an area that I would like to have more magic wandy abilities on.
Right.
This is probably a bookended pointed question. The stations, I'm really curious, Siraj, your thoughts about what works with the stations in the classroom and maybe what doesn't work. John, you want to balance that out?
I'm not really that opinionated about stations in the classroom. Although if I can say one thing, I feel like instead of, and this is something that they do at most schools, instead of putting the students in groups based on their individual level, put them in groups that are kind of mixed up, so that way the students who get the topic more can have a positive influence on the students who aren't exactly understanding the current topic. So that way you're not just putting all of the students who already know what they're doing and how to do it over off in one corner, and the students who, I don't want to say have no clue what they're doing, but who struggle a little bit off in another corner, and then have the students who already know what they're doing grow more, and have the students who are struggling feel like they're not learning anything at all.
Johnny, you want to answer that?
Yeah, and this thing is like 18 pounds, and I'm not so strong. So I think I'll give you a pro and a con for the station rotation. I think the pro is it's so easy for our teachers to adapt to that, and we've seen a wildfire spread of station rotation because teachers, especially at the elementary level, are adopted to that. They understand how to group students in stations, how to leverage technology in this structure, and they're very effective at it. I think several of our most innovative teachers found the limitation after their first year and said, they're in a very rigid structure and they can't do projects beyond what they're into, or they're with peers that they're feeling pulled behind by. And so that 2.0 model I was trying to demonstrate is at least an attempt to push it to what are more open-ended possibilities where students can push beyond and have a lot more voice and choice in their classrooms that don't feel as structured. And I think that's the next growth area for many of those stations.
Last question.
I was going to ask being at Center City, and you explained that one of their worst apps is trying to put a book into a computer. What are some other apps that they have innovated for y'all to help bring technology to how you guys need to learn or want to learn or take it to your level?
I'm gonna have to think about this one.
What was the question?
I said, being at Center City, what is your, how is it over there? You said that one of the apps that you use is like putting a book into a computer. What are other apps that they've used to help bend technology to help further your learning and take it to your level?
Well, the better programs that we have in our school are usually the ones that bend over to the student's style of learning. So if a student usually learns independently, then there's probably an option for that. Maybe an option where they can go off and learn what they want to choose to learn. Like, I'm just going to give the name because, I kind of have to. There's this one program at our school called 10 Marks where the students are able to choose the course that they want to learn. So the teacher will usually give multiple assignments based on the student's individual level, and the student can choose which assignment they want to do based on what they want to learn.
Excellent. All right, so we're going to pause here since this is like a classroom feel anyway. We are going to break out into topics of discussion. Now, hopefully you've taken some notes from both regarding both panels. And so I want you to discuss a couple of things. Where are there areas of greatest overlap? Where are there major areas of friction or conflict? And where are there are major gaps between what the two panelists are discussing, two sets of panelists are discussing. So let's brainstorm and write down. So on the other side, on the other side, the two rooms on your left, my right, are white sheets at every table, Rachel, right? And please, write down your thinking on those white sheets of paper. We'll then circle back here, Rachel, or we'll stay in that room to debrief. Okay, so please find your table, your name correlated to your table, and let's get brainstorming. So I'll pause it here for a second. You should have a student at your table. Okay. Let's go. Excellent.